Thank you for joining me for Sefer HaMitzvos daily study. A little bit of a redo on 123, lesson 123, and then we're going to get into today's. Yesterday we had a little issue for some reason with the uploading, so no big deal, we'll redo it. Lesson 123 covers a positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah, a positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah, and they're both those pairs are regarding the same idea. So positive mitzvah 121 and negative mitzvah 211 are, here's the positive one. Leviticus 23:22 says, "The gleanings of your harvest you shall not harvest, you shall leave them for the poor and the stranger." So this tells us that we're commanded to leave the leket, the stalks that fall to the ground in the course of harvesting for the poor. This applies in the land of Israel. And then we get from the exact same verse a negative mitzvah. The negative mitzvah says, "You shall not gather the gleanings of your harvest." So we get a 2-for-1 in one verse here. So what this tells us, it's forbidden for the landowner to harvest these stalks that fall to the ground in the course of the harvest. Rather, they're left for the poor. If you'll notice, these are all mitzvahs that you don't consciously do, which is kind of interesting. They're mitzvahs for things that happen, like when a sheaf falls, or you forget something, or something is underdeveloped, and we'll get into more of these things. It's just very interesting that a lot of these agricultural things are things that just happen to happen, and they're opportunities for mitzvahs. All right, so Leviticus 19:10 is where we're going to get the next pair of mitzvahs. There it says, "You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger," and this is referring to defective grape clusters. So these clusters are underdeveloped. The word actually relates to like a very young child. So we're commanded to leave the olulos, the grape clusters that have not developed normally, for the poor. And there's 3 different ways that Mishnah Torah talks about how you would know that it's a grape cluster that's underdeveloped. The grapes aren't resting on each other. They're not hanging down in the cluster, and there aren't shoulders, which are the parts of the cluster, the vine that comes down to the cluster that kind of branches off and holds the grapes. But if they're all kind of coming off that middle part, and they're just you just tell they're underdeveloped, you're supposed to leave that for the poor person. And the same verse gives us a negative commandment related to this. It says, "You shall not harvest the defective clusters from your vineyard." So it's forbidden for the landowner to remove the grapes from the vineyard in the course of the harvest. Rather, he must leave them for the poor, the grape clusters that have not developed normally. And this applies only to vineyards, not to other kinds of fruits or vegetables, even things that look like grapes. If it's not actually a grape, this does not apply. All right. Lesson 124. So again, we're going to have 2 pairings. We have positive mitzvah 124 and negative mitzvah 213. Positive mitzvah 122 and negative mitzvah 214. So first, the positive mitzvah. It says in Leviticus 19:10, "You shall not harvest the single grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger." So what this means is that if you have a vineyard and individual grapes fall off the cluster onto the ground, then they're to be left for the poor. So this is a biblical precept, again, that only applies in the land of Israel. All right. The same verse gives us negative mitzvah, the negative mitzvah that pairs with the positive mitzvah, saying, "You shall not gather the single grapes of your vineyard." So it's forbidden for the landowner to harvest the grapes that fall to the ground in the course of harvesting. Rather, they must be left for the poor. All right. Now we get to sheaves. So you have, for instance, like sheaves of wheat or something. So Deuteronomy 24:19 is going to give us both the positive and the negative mitzvah. So here's the positive mitzvah. "And you forget a sheaf in your field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for you, it shall be for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow." So we're commanded to leave for the poor those bundles of the harvested crop that were forgotten in the field. This is a biblical precept that applies only in the land of Israel. And finally, collecting forgotten sheaves. The same verse comes and tells us, "And you forget a sheep in the field, you shall not go back to get it." It's forbidden for the landowner to collect a bundle of the harvested crop that was forgotten in the field. Rather, he must leave it to the poor. This prohibition applies both to grain and fruit. There's a lot of interesting things that go with these. Like for instance, when times of the day that the poor would come to get this, which corresponds to Shacharit, Mincha, Maariv, and when the poor would come to get these things, the grapes, the sheaves of wheat, etc. It's for one, it's humbling for them to have to do it, but at the same time, I think that there's something that Hashem wants to give the poor actually an opportunity for dignity, that they're collecting their own food. They're going out and they're getting the food. They're doing some work to get this, and I think that's a very interesting and important thing that these mitzvahs teach us. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. With God's help, we'll be back tomorrow for more mitzvahs related to agricultural topics. All right, thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day in every way.